my name is Erin and I'm a senior flood hydrologist. But before we have a bit of a chat today, I just would like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land in which I am, which is the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. So to get into things, hydrologist or water engineer, it's my day-to-day career, but it actually affected a lot of my childhood as well. So for a lot of people, water can be a really happy thing. It can be memories of going to the pool, swimming with your friends, going for a swim in the river. Water can also be very stressful for some people. It can be a necessity that is limited, or you might not have access to clean water, or if you're in drought, it could be difficult and challenging to ensure that you have enough water. It also can be something that's very scary for people. If you've ever been in a serious flood event or have experienced a natural disaster and seen the full force of what water can do, it can be really terrifying. So water can shape a lot of people and the lives of a lot of people. So for me, my journey with water started in the Torres Straits, which is where I'm from. For those who don't know, the Torres Straits is a group of 100 islands, about 17 of which are inhabited, that's situated between the tip of Cape York Peninsula and Papua New Guinea. So I was born up there and I spent pretty much all my childhood on crayfishing boats, which are the very colourful lobsters that you see in the pictures there. And even though we travelled all through the Torres Straits, I spent the majority of my childhood on two islands, Wyburn, also known as Thursday Island, and Waterbear, also known as Sue Island. And for me, water was everywhere. It was integral to my life. Not only did we live on a fishing boat that was surrounded by water, it was essential for income for my family because we caught crayfish. And I had a slightly alternative upbringing. Didn't realise this as a kid, but you learned it a bit later in life. I actually never went to school until I was 14. Because we were so remote, my mum had to actually teach me. So after I'd finished my scheduled learning for the day, I was usually out either swimming, diving with my brothers, catching fish for dinner, or catching some fish for my pet pelicans as well. So water was a very enjoyable thing that was so important and integral to my daily life. Now that, really shifted and my life really changed when I hit 14 and I had to go to boarding school for the first time. It was incredibly confronting. I not only had to leave my community, my family, but I had to move to a large city for me, which was Brisbane, if anyone's been. It was the first time I'd ever had to sit in a classroom, sit an exam, or even wear shoes for the whole day, which was terrible. But it also taught me a lot about resilience. And I was very grateful for my upbringing because it taught me how to learn. It taught me how to teach myself. And that was invaluable when I had to go to high school. And I was really fortunate. At the end of high school, I actually obtained a scholarship that allowed me to go on exchange to Brazil, where I spent my last year of high school. And it was a phenomenal experience. Not only, but anything that has to do with water or could have any impact by water, that's where I can come in. So I spent the first 3 or so years of my career working in flood risk management. So my job was mainly to support communities post major flood events. So either they had been affected by major floods and we were looking at ways to mitigate and reduce their risk so they wouldn't get flooded again, or sometimes I worked with emergency services to ensure that they knew when and where they had to evacuate people so they weren't impacted and hurt within major flood events. I also spent a number of years working in major infrastructure upgrades. So I've got to work on helping design some of the largest highways in Australia. I've also got to work on Australia's largest tunnelling system. And basically my role was to ensure that your tunnels don't flood when you're inside them, your roads won't get cut off, so you always will have access as well. And 2, your bridges don't fall down. They're quite important bridges. These days, however, I think I have the funnest sort of job these days. I get to make computer models where I simulate dams breaking, and I make inland tsunamis that go across Australia, and then I assess who is potentially at risk and who is at risk of potentially dying if a dam failed. Now, this is really important because if a dam failed, it is like an inland tsunami in some areas. They can be incredibly dangerous. So it's making sure that we understand the risks associated with these really large water bodies, but then also working with communities, emergency services to ensure that if a disaster like this happens, everyone is safe and hopefully can evacuate in time. So even though most of this is done on a computer, I am allowed out of the office sometimes, which is wonderful. I've gotten to work on projects in every state in Australia, and that has meant a lot of travel, which is amazing. I've also been able to work in a number of international countries as well. So I've done a lot of work in Southeast Asia, where I've been able to look at the impacts of dams on communities, and also the river health in some major rivers such as the Mekong River. I've also had the privilege to be able to attend a number of conferences and work internationally in countries such as India as well. So there is a lot of bonuses to be able to be an engineer. You do get to travel quite a bit. As well as my day-to-day job as an engineer, I do donate a lot of my time to non-for-profit organisations such as Engineers Without Borders and WaterAid. I feel very privileged that I was able to receive an education and to become an engineer. So for me, it's really about giving something back. And I do donate a lot of my technical skills, and I get to go work in a lot of countries. For example, at the moment, I'm working with WaterAid, looking at a project called Water for Women to ensure that women have access to safe and clean water in Papua New Guinea. However, one of my funnest programs, which I do run, and I've actually run for the last 7 years, is a program with Engineers Without Borders. I have a really strong belief that if we are going to solve some of the major problems that we're facing in today's society, whether it's climate change or extreme weather events, we really need to have a representation of every person in the community and our industry to be able to solve problems for everyone. And because of that, I do a lot of work around trying to increase diversity within our industry. One of the programs I run is I travel to remote areas within Australia and run engineering programs for Engineers Without Borders within a number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, which is so much fun. I get to work with kids from 3 years old right up to 18 years old, where we get to do lots of hands-on activities, very similar to what you guys have done here today. And it is an absolutely wonderful experience. So that is a very brief overview of myself and I guess what I do as an engineer.
Like, you've always been super confident around water. You were never like scared of swimming or anything. Do you sometimes find it really hard, or do you find it really interesting when you meet people who are like had a bad experience with water and are then scared of it? Or is it very easy to see where they're coming from because you've spent so much time like studying through your like how it affects people and how it hurts people, so you're like, oh yeah, water's scary?
Definitely. I have a very, like you said, I could swim before I could actually walk. However, I have a very strong understanding of, I think, the risks associated with water, and it can be very scary and also very damaging for people. So no, I definitely can see where people are coming from and understand that fear. I think that is important, and some people probably need to have a little bit more fear, particularly if you do not realise the risks. Certainly in large flood events or people driving cars through flooded roads can be extremely dangerous.
Just had a question in the chat from Charlotte. She's asking, how did you discover your passion with engineering?
Yeah, a lot of it came back, I think, to my desire to want to work with communities. When I was over in Brazil, and particularly when I grew up, I saw a lot of infrastructure, a lot of sort of problems come in and be solved with no consultation to the community, and they were installing solutions that would not fit for the environment, for the community that they were going into, and they just didn't work. So I think that really was the foundation for me wanting a job to be able to actually design things that were fit for purpose and to support communities that were community specific. So that was a real drive. And yeah, certainly after I went to Brazil, I think the realization of that and realizing how much I wanted to support my community as well that I was from.
Got another question in the chat from Shri. Feel free to unmute and ask if you like.
Thanks, Max. That is an amazing experience, Erin. I mean, how I wish I could swim before I could walk. Even I've been walking for the last 55 years. I can't swim even now. So that should be such an experience for you. This always wonders me. I've got a lot of siblings who are women and men, but most of the women have always taken up non-engineering. So can you share to the rest of the world about your experience of being a woman engineer in a completely male, so-called, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't qualify that in the so-called male-dominated engineering world, your experience and your message to all those absolutely enterprising young girls who are doing the competition?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. In reality, I came from a crayfishing industry where me and my mum were actually the only females in the whole of the industry. So going into engineering actually felt a little bit more diverse, I guess, for me. But yeah, it is a very male-dominated industry, and I regularly will walk into meetings with clients or even within my company, and I'm the only female in the room. That is changing, and I think that's something that shouldn't deter anyone. Like I said, engineering is in everywhere you look. You need engineers to solve problems for every aspect of your life, from the food that you eat to the house that you're in. That there will be something in there that's engineered. And the real important thing is that our industry needs diversity, because we are designing things for everyone, for every person within the community. So we definitely need females in this industry. I think there's wonderful opportunities out there. It's something that I definitely wouldn't be afraid of. There's no way in the world should you think that just because everyone says that it's a male-dominated industry that women can't do it. Definitely not. It is one of the most funnest industries that I've ever been into. Sometimes it can be a little bit confronting, particularly at the start. But no, it's a really supportive industry, and I have a huge amount of fun, and it's something that I would really encourage you to give a go if you love to solve problems. Or it's really about problem solving, and I think having that mindset.
Yeah. I also always believe that women bring a bit of a humanitarian touch to engineering, because women are generally much more cordial about solving a problem rather than being subjective about solving a problem.
Well, that's the thing. Everyone has different views, different approaches, and I think the more of those views that you can bring into the room, the more creative solution you can solve.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm really glad that point's been touched on, because it's something that we really tried to instill in all of our students throughout the course of the weekend, that engineering is as much about the kind of the technical or like the machining aspect as it is about the people that you're designing for. And so in order to sort of make the best products, you need that representation from a wide array of people, because engineering is so human focused. So I probably have time for one quick question. If anyone's got one and want to quickly unmute or type in the chat, otherwise, so last opportunity.
I have a question. I was just wondering, having had finished university, was it hard to find work, or what was the process like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Certainly in Australia, we're really lucky. A lot of the larger companies do have graduate programs, so they tie into when university finishes. So sort of halfway through your last year of uni, you will start to be sort of prepping to put applications in and applying for a lot of the programs that are out there. Nearly all of the large firms will have positions. So my theory is, in a way, you've got to be in it to win it. So you apply in mass. You go through a lot of interview processes and selection process with a lot of them, and you'll go through a shortlisting process. The other way you can do it is if you want to go into sort of smaller firms or local council, is actually going out and providing your CV and your resume if they don't have specific programs for graduates. But I'm sure some of our uni students here are probably either going through that process or starting to think about that, and they can probably provide some better information, because I think mine's a little bit outdated, but I certainly know there's still quite a lot of graduate programs out there.
Students, good morning, and congratulations, Erin. What a story. Beautiful. I wish it had gone longer. I mean, I love these kind of stories. In fact, later in my talk, I would be sharing with you all one such story. So thank you. I am Vinayak Trivedi, joining in from Pune. I head Bentley Education. So those of you who know Bentley, so Bentley is in advancing infrastructure, and we say advancing infrastructure that sustains economies and environments of the world. Bentley Education is the education wing of Bentley. So thank you all for having me. But before I get into my talk, I don't know how many here might be following cricket, but congratulations to you, Australia, for winning the T20 World Cup. Some of you probably would be Googling what T20 was, but Australia won that, so congratulations. And those from New Zealand who lost the finals, I say hard luck next time. And by the way, New Zealand is playing in India even as I speak now. Moving on, first let me start by telling how much profound respect and gratitude we share for Engineers Without Borders at large. In my mind, it's not just an organization, but a movement in itself, where passionate and strongly valued people worldwide are working towards a vision, empowering students to bring positive change in society through, I heard the word humanitarian touch, right? Humanitarian engineering. It's about giving everyone access to engineering knowledge. And talking about access to engineering knowledge, allow me to talk a little bit about Bentley Education. Our mission is very much aligned too. We strive to ensure a steady flow of young graduates that the industry needs. Those graduates trained in technology from academia, moving on to industry. We, Bentley Education and Engineers Without Borders, are joined by common problem that engineering industry faces. We are all aware that now, more than ever, we need engineers to not only tackle various environmental and other infrastructural issues. We heard about the climate change and so forth that one faces, but also to bring people, technology, and society together. And with regard to engineering talent, our experience, we at Bentley Education, our experience over the years have given us a vantage point where we engage with the two ends of the spectrum. On one end, industry is in constant need of engineering talent and don't find enough of them. And on the other hand, students are looking not only for a job, but they're looking for a fulfilling job where they can make impact on quality of life. Here in Australia, it's no different. There are half as many, as you might be knowing, engineers as Australia needs. That means there aren't enough students who want to take up engineering as a career of choice. We saw the story of Erin here and others who sometimes stumble into the engineering because of some motivation, some inspiration, or some upbringing, and so forth. So when it comes to women in engineering, the situation is even worse. We heard how Erin has been in situations where she employability, career prospects, and so on. It is about future and for the world in which we all live in. This is where initiatives like the Innovation Challenge play a significant role. A series of small challenges from different engineering topics that EWB Australia team hosted will excite a lot of students, we hope, to explore STEM subjects. Such competitions help students understand what real engineering is and what do engineers do, what problems engineers solve. In fact, I refer to pandemic, which has re-emphasized the realization that no one has all the answers. Innovation has the answers. And as we strive towards attracting more students to engineering, we need to take everyone together and march forward. The students from all background, region, race, and gender should get access to engineering education opportunities. And what's delightful is to see the involvement here in this challenge. Together, we are empowering students who come from underrepresented communities. And after all, Engineers Without Borders is all about breaking the borders, breaking the barriers. And what's even more impressive is in this particular challenge, I came to know that more than 50% of the participants in this challenge are girls. Fantastic. As if shouting out, girls are not going to be left behind in the engineering. We heard Erin mentioning how the situation is changing, and it's changing because of such initiatives, such efforts, one step at a time. And I was delighted, as I said, with the story of Erin. And we need to we have to build on small success stories and bring them to students. I'll spend a couple of minutes here sharing this particular story to grab your attention. Success stories have to be shared with students, and especially those students who have not made conscious decision about engineering career yet, right? They're still thinking where they are headed. The young girl in this story here, Aliza, that we have shared on our Bentley Education portal too, is she was born in Pakistan, a family of doctors raised in Scotland. She had never thought of engineering as a career. And at 16, she participated in one STEM-focused learning program known as Design, Engineer, Construct, DEC. They happen to be our education partner in UK, and got inspired to take up engineering as a career. So here was a spark, here was an opportunity. But then the biggest opportunity that came her way was to participate in the world's first ever Hyperloop Challenge in collaboration with Bentley Systems in 2019. And with determined efforts, hard teamwork, etc. over a year, her team became the first of few students who won the competition. And then the prize was to attend Bentley's annual conference here in infrastructure, where the best and brightest of the projects from around the world and the professionals around the world gathered together. And this was in Singapore for a week. Aliza and her team, they were pleasantly surprised and shocked to see to have the experience there. When they received the award from Bentley CEO Greg Bentley, they had the standing ovation from thousands of professionals who had gathered there. Wouldn't that not only encourage to move on in careers like this or choosing engineering career, but make one believe that the choice they are making is the right one. How encouraging is that, right? And following that week, she has grown stronger in believing that she will become a great civil engineer one day, and be an ambassador to other women, especially in her home country, Pakistan. So, girls, this tells you that taking small steps is all it takes. You need to go out there and dream, explore, develop your confidence, and plenty of opportunities exist there. As we're talking about opportunities, I'd like to highlight to all students that programs like ours, the Bentley Education, are instrumental in connecting the dots between industry and academia. As I was saying, it's an ironical situation where industry, infrastructure industry, water is one of them, is where infrastructure industry is looking for talent. They're not finding enough of them. On the other hand, students are looking for such careers, fulfilling careers where they can make an impact on the quality of life. And we connect the dots between industry and academia. We are here to help students tap their full potential and foresee the fundamental relation between real-world projects, because it's all about application. First is, of course, just being aware what the industry is about, what opportunities there exist for me, apart from the other choices that I have. But more importantly, being able to see a relationship between applying what I'm going to pursue as a career to solve the problems of the world. At our portal, Bentley Education portal, students get free access to the same Bentley applications that the professionals use. So once again, many congratulations to all of you participants here. I would also like to thank the enthusiastic team at EWB Australia for their support throughout our partnership. Thank you. Thank you once again. And any questions for me? I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you so much for that, Vinayak. No, I really loved hearing about the Alizar's journey there, as well as the key point, like that connection between, you know, what you're learning and then being able to apply that to such a wide range of sort of problems around the world and things like that. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. I'm happy to read them out. Otherwise, you can unmute and hopefully not talk over each other as a common thing.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation to come and speak to you all today. So my name is Dr. Brooke Farrugia, and I am in the Department of Biomedical Engineering. And I think I got the invitation today because one of the students that's part of Engineers Without Borders, she did find a job at another university doing more research, and I was. So from there, I joined the University QUT up in Brisbane, and I was a research associate, which is just another word for a postdoc, in a chemistry department. So there I did a lot of work around 3D printing, and you'll see some of the slides or some of the work about that coming up in a sec. So I stayed in Queensland for about 3 years, and after that I then moved back down to Sydney. I joined the same university. I joined the same department that I was in before, but I joined a different research group. And from there, I learned a different set of skills that I had learnt from both my university degrees and my first postdoc as well. So I spent about 6 years at UNSW. So adding to the total list of years that I have spent at university. And also while I was working at UNSW, I started to do a little bit of teaching as well. So after I finished my position at UNSW, I then moved down to Melbourne, and that's where I am at the moment. So I've been at Melbourne in the Department of Biomedical Engineering for 3 years now. Doesn't seem like quite 3 years because 2 of those years have been COVID, and I've been doing work from my house like everybody else has. But I really like it in Melbourne. So you can see I've kind of made my way down the east coast of Australia. So what do I do? And if any of you are considering academia, it's not just teaching, it's not just research, it's a whole range of things. So I do teaching, and some of the subjects that I teach, one of them is Introduction to Biomaterials. And as you will see, a lot of the research that I do is about biomaterials, so I really, really like that subject. The other subject that I teach is Biomedical Engineering Management and Regulations. So this subject is extremely important in terms of relating what you do in university to industry. So we learn about engineering management how industry works, and then also regulations. So regulations means how medical devices are regulated in Australia, and not just Australia, I guess I do touch upon outside Australia, so around the world. Because if you want a medical device, if you want a medicine, if you want a biologic to be sold in industry, you have to go through all of these processes, which is regulations. So students in this class learn the first bit about how you go about doing that. And there are some other subjects in the degree which then kind of takes those concepts a little bit further. So I also do a lot of research, and my research is around biomaterials and tissue engineering. And I have another slide after this, which goes into that in a little bit more detail. And so in addition to research and teaching, I also do a lot of service. So the service that I do is I take part in a lot of scientific research societies. So I'm currently the president of the Australasian Wound and Tissue Repair Society. I'm the secretary of the Matrix Biology Society of Australia and New Zealand. And when I was a PhD student, I was the student rep in the Australasian Society Biomaterials and Tissue Engineering. And I choose to do that because it gives back to the research community. I also get to know a whole lot of people doing the research that I do, both here in Australia and overseas. And it also means that a whole lot of people get to know what I do as well, which in a way, if you were in industry, there are also conferences and networking events. I guess this is the academic version of networking and knowing people within the industry as well. So in terms of what do I do about research, I do a whole range of things. So here is a small snippet, and hopefully you can see the videos moving as well. So one of the things that I do is I look at 3D printing and scaffold development. When I was in Queensland, usually industry is who we collaborate to then take that research that we've done and translate it into some sort of product. I also have a look at host response, and what I mean by that is we develop all of these fantastic biomaterials and medical devices, and then we implant them in the body, and sometimes they don't always work how we think they're going to work. So what I do is have a look at, or one of the things I'm interested in is having a look at when we put them in the body and things go wrong, why do they go wrong? And then from that, what we can do to improve them and make them better. Another project that I'm working on at the moment is developing 3D organ models, and this is in collaboration with surgeons, particularly surgeons who are highly skilled on the surgical robots called the Da Vinci, and there's a few more different types of those coming out. But what we're working with them to do is make models for their surgical training, because at the moment when surgeons train on these pieces of equipment, they either train on cadavers or on animals. So while they are the gold standard at the moment and what surgeons use, there are a lot of things that we could improve in that. And so what we're doing is we're working with them to make organ models that are more realistic, and it is if the surgeons are training on a human so that they can gain the surgical skills that they need to then be able to perform surgery on patients. And then one of the other things that I do is make biomimetic materials. So biology, mimetic, something that mimics. I make biomaterials that mimic what things do in our body. So one of the things that I look at is making materials that deliver different biomolecules to speed up different processes. And I look at wound healing for that as well. So while I've told you a whole lot about what I do, I guess sometimes when I talk to, or we have open days at uni, or I talk to students who haven't quite decided what they're going to do at university, one of the questions that we get a lot is, what is biomedical engineering? So biomedical engineering is really, I think of it as if you go into a hospital and you see all of the equipment and all of the things that the surgeons use, all of the different medical devices, it's the engineers that are behind that are developing medical technology is what biomedical engineers do. So it's really bringing together both medicine, science and engineering. So you learn a lot of the fundamental engineering principles and then apply it to medicine. So you look at addressing healthcare problems, You look at a whole range of different human systems and look at how we can use engineering principles to then develop new things as well. So if you were to do biomedical engineering at university, what would you learn? You would learn a whole range of things. You would start off with a lot of the fundamental engineering principles. It's engineering, so you will do a lot of maths. You'll learn about mechanics, you'll learn about biomaterials, biosignal processing, bionics. So there's a whole range of things. And then particularly at Melbourne, if you do biomedical engineering at Melbourne, you can then take different electives depending on kind of what biomedical engineering you want to, in a way, specialise in. So whether that's more of an electronics field, if it's more of a mechanics field, if it's more of an electrical field as well. So there's a whole different range of things you can learn. But the advice that I would give for any students wondering whether or not to do not just biomedical engineering, but engineering in general. One of the things that I think a few of the other speakers have touched upon it today, one of the things that you learn as an engineer is problem solving. And problem solving is then something that can be applied to a whole different range of things. Even if you don't stay in a purely engineering job, you can do a whole different range of things. For example, when I finished my degree, one of my friends or colleagues, they went to work in a bank, and the reason why they didn't do any finance in their degree at all, but the bank wanted them because of their problem solving skills. So just because you're an engineer doesn't mean that you can't then use your skills that you've learned as in your engineering degrees and apply them to somewhere else. I kind of find out engineering it's really a limitless degree. You have so many opportunities once you finish to go and choose your path of what you want to do. So with that, I'd like to thank you. I've put up my email address there. So for anybody who has any questions, you're more than welcome to email me if you don't ask them now during the session. Feel free to send me an email, and I'm more than happy to talk to students if you want a little bit of advice or just have some questions in general.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Brooke. Something I really just loved as well that you mentioned was just how cross-disciplinary engineering is as a field. So myself studying mechatronics engineering, which is a bit of a blur of different disciplines. I think that's a really great point for everyone to take home.